This is the Pick Six Podcast, and this is the Conference Championship Recap. That's Will Brinson. That's John Breech. I'm Ryan Wilson. All right, guys, let's start in Santa Clara, where the 49ers trailed the Lions 24-7 at half. And this is where I point out since 2022, the 49ers were 0-5 when trailing by 14 or more points at any point in the game. And then all they did was score 27 unanswered points to that late Lions touchdown. They recovered that little tidy onside kick, kneeled it out. San Francisco's going back to the Super Bowl. We'll face a familiar foe in the old Kansas City Chiefs. Plenty of time to talk about that. But now let's talk about that San Francisco-Detroit game. So, Brinson, what do we to make of this 49ers team? One that was invisible for large parts of both their playoff games. First against the Packers last week, and then tonight against the Lions before setting the world afire.
I'm going to answer your question. I am surprised that we're not starting with Dan Campbell on fourth downs, because that feels like the only thing anyone is talking about. And yes, I realize we need to buck the Pick Six Podcast 10-year trend of talking about losers first. So sure. Look, I think San Francisco, I think that they are a team that has started slow for different reasons the last 2 weeks. One, against Green Bay, I think Deebo Samuel's injury caused them to start slow because of how they scripted things out. And then two, I think they came out tight, and Detroit came out really just more prepared to playing the underdog role. San Francisco wanted to sort of felt it was gonna be like a little, a heavyweight fight. You feel the other side out, and Detroit came out swinging like crazy. But eventually what we saw was Brock Purdy playing his ass off, scrambling like crazy. I think 51 total rushing yards, if you don't count the whatever he did at the end, if he kneeled down. He ran the ball, finished with 48 total because I think he kneeled down, but ran the ball well, delivered some key strikes. And I don't know, man, do you want to talk about momentum is real? Like momentum is real, Ray Lewis once said. Because it sure felt like momentum was real for the 49ers with all the different breaks they got, whether it was Dan Campbell goes for it or kicks on fourth and goal from the 3 right before the half to make the score 24-7. The Lions wouldn't score again until there was under a minute left in the game, and San Francisco adjusted well, but they come out, they get a field goal, cut it to 14 points. And then when Dan Campbell, goes for it on 4th and 2, Niners get the ball back, go down and score quickly. Immediately, Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles. Niners score again, and then they tack on a field goal, and then that final touchdown. When it was 24-24, it felt like the Niners were up 24 points. And I think that it'll be a fast. I would say that I will probably be picking Kansas City, because as good as the Niners are, it feels like they're a little too lemon bootied, Breech, for their own good sometimes in these moments, and almost needed to be down big to just say F it and kind of cut it loose.
Brinson, I don't even know what lemon bootied means, but I agree with you because of the context you used it in. I mean, we are talking about a team that now really feels like they could have easily lost in either of these playoff games. You saw the Packers dominate them or control the game for 3 quarters before that 49ers comeback last week. And really, this to me felt, and we will dissect the Lions here when we're done to talk about San Francisco, but this really to me felt more like a Detroit collapse than the 49ers comeback. And obviously, you don't outscore a team 27-7 in a half unless you did do some things right. And I think this is probably what Kyle Shanahan told this team at halftime is like, okay, guys, we are losing 24-7, but it's not like we can't move the ball. We put up 130 yards. We're not doing anything that it was just a weird game. Weird first half. Christian McCaffrey wasn't doing anything in the first half, and Kyle Shanahan seemed determined to get his run game going, even though the Lions had one of the best rushing defenses in football, and he wouldn't get away from that. And then, obviously Brinson talked about the big plays that Brock Purdy made with his legs. So Juwan Jennings had that one crazy catch. And
the insane Brandon Ayuk catch should have been an interception and set up the first touchdown. I mean,
just so many crazy things happened that I don't even know where to start with. Like, if I was grading the 49ers for this game, I wouldn't even know what to give them because this is they look 17-point comeback in an NFC title game, tied for the biggest in NFC title game history. Like, all due credit, but my God, what did we just watch? Wilson, what did we just watch?
Yeah. All right. So we got that out of the way. We talked about the 49ers. Let's get to the real reason we're here.
Thank you. I was thrown by your first question because I was like, I was just sort of thinking, like, that's all anybody's texting or talking about right now is Dan Campbell.
We're going to get to it. I think it's important to give the flowers to the team.
I agree with you.
So to get to what we really want to talk about here, and Breech just talked about the first half. Lions had 280 total yards in the first half to 131 that Breech mentioned. They had 148 rush yards, and it looked like Kyle Shanahan was going to walk down the sideline and strangle Steve Wilks for not getting the defense to play like it's supposed to. But let's get to what happened with Dan Wilks and his aggressiveness here, because here's what I'm going to say. That's what got them here, this aggressiveness. So yes. I'm not going to fault Dan Campbell for that, but you can certainly be angry if you're a Lions fan or if you're Pete Prisco, who's a traditionalist, or even BMAC was tweeting about it. So here we go. 24-10. Campbell goes for it on 4th and 2 at the 49ers 28-yard line, and Josh Reynolds drops the ball that hits him in the hands. Is it a tough catch? Yes. Should he catch it? Yes, he should also.
I think you got to back it up to right before half when it was 4th and goal on the 3-yard line, and he told he told Tom Rinaldi, one of the two, that he agonized over the decision to kick the field goal. I would have kicked because it's the end of the half, but it's also like the karmic nature of not going for it there, and then like you don't get any of the breaks in the second half. It stood out to me for sure.
But to Brinson's point there, that just proves that there is at least one conservative bone in Dan Campbell's body, and he used it right before halftime. So,
and it sounded like Greg Olsen
made
the point that
gone there. Would you have kicked or gone there?
It sounded like Greg Olsen made the point that because you saw Dan Campbell go talk to the official and was looking down the hash mark, and if it had been 2.5 yards instead of 3.5, maybe that changes his math. So I think that was the dividing line, the 3-yard line in that instance. I'm fine with him kicking it there because you go up. What are you up at halftime?
You're up 20. No, you're up 24-7 at half with that kick. And he did say it was a smidge. This is a quote. It's a smidge too far for us. And to your point, Wilson, I think he walked down the sideline, saw where it was. It's the 3. And look, like the analytics are taking the numbers that are being run through the stats and information system that's being distributed. Like, for instance, ESPN's analytical operation is taking the number that they get from the NFL game stats and information system, right? And it's saying, okay, what would you do on 4th and 3? Well, if you're Dan Campbell and you walk down there, it's 4th and 3 3/4. Like that's, that could be 4th and 3 in the game book, but it's probably closer to 4th and 4. And so I think that stuff kind of eludes us in the moment as well.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back. So we got the field goal. I think I'm okay with that. I'm guessing you guys are okay with the field goal before half?
The one thing I'll say about the field goal real quick is that the thing is, if you go for a touchdown, you don't getting up 3 scores is the key there. And if you get the touchdown, you're still only up 3 scores versus the field goal, you're up 3 scores. And a field goal is basically 100% from that close. A touchdown obviously is not. And if you don't get it, you're only up 2 scores. The 49ers get the ball first in the first half. And at that situation, all I thought about was the Bengals Chiefs AFC title game where the one the Bengals won, where the Chiefs went for it, didn't get it, and they could have made it a 3 score. It's just, there's a lot of dynamics.
But to that point, when they kick the field goal before the half, right? Like if they go for it and don't get it, it's the same argument where when they went for it on 4th down, and then the Niners go down and score a touchdown, even though it was like basically a completely fluke play off of a face mask that Brandon Ayuk ended up catching. It's like, well, that's what Dan Campbell gets for not going for it. However, I liked going for it in the instance you're talking about, Wilson.
Okay, so let's go through the painful reliving of what happened in the second half for these Lions. So Dan Campbell goes for it on 4th and 2. They're up 24-10 on the 49ers 28-yard line. 7 minutes to go in the third quarter. I mentioned Josh Reynolds dropped the ball that hits him in the hands. Tough catch. Yes. Should he have made it? Absolutely. Yes. So instead of going up 27-10, the aforementioned Brandon Ayuk, Kendall Vildor helmet smash touchdown or to the 5-yard line happens. And look, man, we say it all the time. There's a reason these guys are playing defense because they can't catch Ball hit him right in the freaking face. You would like to make that catch. He didn't make the catch. Shout out to Brandon Ayuk. And look, the other thing we talk a lot about is that sometimes Brock Purdy struggles with a deep ball in terms of underthrowing it. He actually overthrew that one. So I'll give him credit for unleashing that one. Great play by
I thought there
Brandon
could have
Ayuk.
been OPI there, honestly. Like you kind of hit Wilbur there. Breech, in that instance, 48-yard field goal. You mentioned going up 3 scores, and I agree with you. Going up 3 scores is a huge difference. Would you have kicked or gone for it there?
Now, here's real quick to answer a question, Brinson. Number one, did Michael Badgley have the worst week of practice in the history at the NFL? Because this is just Dan Campbell's not even looking at his kicker. He didn't hesitate for the 2 in the second half. Obviously, he did in the first half. And so both of those kicks, and we'll get to the second one. So I'll just stick to this one right now. This one would have been a 46-yard field goal. I tweeted out that it could have factored into Dan Campbell's decisions that Michael Badgley has a career percentage of 59.1% between 45 and 49 yards. So this is not a lock by any means. Now, that being said, this came with 7 minutes left in the third quarter. If I have a chance to go up 3 scores with 7 minutes left in the third quarter, I am absolutely going to try it. So I would have kicked.
But Breech, let me push back on that. So 50, what's the percentage?
Yeah, say that again. I was texting it to my friends, so we were all arguing about this.
59.1 between 45 and 49.
Okay, do you feel better about converting a 4th and 2 or 59% chance of making the field goal?
Well, now hold on. This because I didn't see Michael Badgley warm up on Sunday. There's a lot that factors into it.
All right, Michael Jackson, keep me walking.
Badgley was ripping Jaeger shots on the sideline. It
was perfect kicking weather. I mean, it wasn't cold. It wasn't rainy. It was absolutely perfect kicking weather. So if he was out there drilling 50-yarders and warm-ups, then I'm absolutely going to have confidence in him to make that. And look, going up 3 scores again against a team that had mostly struggled. Obviously, they only got a field goal on their first drive of the half. So it's not even like they got that touchdown. They didn't have that momentum yet. They got 3 points. You take that 3 points right back from them, and they're back at square one where they were at halftime, except they've lost 8 minutes. So I would have taken the field goal there.
Okay. All right. Let me get through these and then we'll reevaluate. No interruptions for 90 seconds. Here we go. So instead of going up 27-10, the Ayuk play down to the 5-yard line. CMC scores a few moments later. And then it's 24-17. A little tight butt syndrome going on. So 5 minutes left to go in the third quarter. 2 minutes later, it's tied. Jahmyr Gibbs fumbles on the first play on a wonky handoff. And a 70-point lead in 8 minutes, Arrivederci. So
17.
that was a
70.
That was a turnaround. And I'll just ask you, Brinson, how much blame are you putting on Dan Campbell? Because as Breech notes, if you even kick the field goal there, you're up 3 scores, and that makes things immeasurably more difficult, you would imagine, for the 49ers.
I think that, look, Dan Campbell coaches. Here's where I stand on this. And for me, it's as simple as Dan Campbell was hyper aggressive all year long, and we loved it. And when it worked great. You were rolling the dice on these 4th down conversions. And we've gone back and forth on a text thread with me and my friends about this. It is like a huge arguing point that there's no right answer for. Even the analytics, like Seth Walder tweets out ESPN's in-house analytics for it. And it's like, it's right on the edge. We're talking like somewhere between 0.1 and 0.5, percent added win probability. It's not a ton, it's fractional. And I think that Dan Campbell has had, I've said it before in every preview, that his aggressiveness could flip these games because as an underdog, it gives you a chance to change, change how your aggression can change everything and give you an opportunity for more possessions. For instance, when they're up 24-10, and he goes for it on 4th and 2, and if Josh Reynolds catches that, you burn 2 or 3 more minutes off of the clock and potentially get a touchdown and maybe put the game away. So I'm okay being aggressive there. I thought at the end of I thought that the third one where they were down.
Well, that one yet. Because
real quick, I would have gone for it on the second one. I'm fine with kicking before half. I would have gone for it on the second one. I would have kicked on the third one, and then I wouldn't have used my timeout at the end of the game. That's where I sort of stood on his. But to answer your question, Wilson, I don't blame Dan Campbell for being the same coach, the same guy that he was throughout the year, and just catching some bad breaks and losing because of it.
Hey, Breech, let me add real quick the next one you're talking about here. 4th and 3 from the 49ers 30-yard line, just under 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Goff rolls right and throws incomplete when he gets flushed out of the pocket there. The 49ers come down. Elijah Mitchell, one play, one touchdown, 34-24, game basically over. So same question to you there, Johnny, unless you have something else you want to add.
Well, look, I understand that this is the point Wilson made all year whenever I would push back on Dan Campbell, that you have to know when to not be crazy. Well, no, Wilson, because it blew up in his face here.
Oh.
But you were saying, and you said this about the Cowboys game, the 2-point conversion after the 5-yard penalty that pushed him back to the 7. That's just Dan Campbell's nature, and maybe he'll come back and bite him in the butt. Maybe it won't, but that is his philosophy. That's how he does things. But we did see that is not how he always does things, because he did kick the field goal in the first half, as we mentioned, which is why it's key to bring that up, as Brinson mentioned. And so, and it wasn't even the fact that they failed on these fourth downs. It's that you have a running game that was averaging 7 yards per carry, and you threw the ball on both fourth downs. Maybe, I don't know.
They ran it on the third down at the end of the game, Breech.
The third down run at the end of the game was a horrendous play call.
Breech called that one in. That was his fault. He told Ben Johnson to run that play.
But here, real quick on Dan Campbell, though, here's what I'm going to say about Dan Campbell is that you have to know when to rein it in. You see your team flailing, especially on the second one, when it's 27-24, the 49ers have all the momentum. The last thing you want to do is, as soon as they failed there, did anybody think that the Lions defense was going to get a stop? No, you knew the 49ers were going to score and it was game over. You kick a field goal, it's 27-27. Now the 49ers are on their heels. They're in a tie game with a 7-point underdog, and in a perfect situation for them to choke a game away. And instead, the Lions just choke this away.
Third down comparisons, 17 points to 0 points, 170 yards to 42 yards, 126 passing yards for the Brock Purdy's, 22 for the Jared Goffs. And the turnover, one other thing I want to mention, because we can talk about the decision-making with Dan Campbell, and I think Brinson's right, and Breech, I think you would like to agree, but that's why the Lions are where they are. They would have been an 8-win team, best case maybe, if they don't take those chances. But also want to know, little things also add up besides the decision-making from the head coach. Josh Reynolds forgot how to catch for large parts of this game. The Vildor doink doesn't help on the Brandon Ayuk thing. Breech, I want to ask you about this. What about, so they get backed up. They're on their minus 26 after a string of bad plays in the third quarter, I believe. Could have been the fourth quarter. The punter booms a 76-yarder. It bounces straight up inside the 4-yard line. And Chase Lucas, for reasons that remain unanswered to me, catches the ball in the end zone instead of calming down and catching it at the 1-yard line. That could have flipped the field position. Instead, they get it at the 20. That's another thing that happened. And then Melvin Fonwu missed the sack on Purdy. That saved a big run that got a first down. So those things also add up in terms
I'll just say on the punt real quick, just epitomized the Lions night, where if you can't even down a punt correctly, and real quick, Debo brought the graphic up here that we didn't mention real quick because somebody's accusing me of classic hindsight takes, where that graphic said Dan Campbell's eventually going to cost his team more than Sam Laporta with his gambling. And that's the conversation we had after Laporta got injured in the final week of the season. And then we said that if he keeps being this aggressive, it's going to come back and bite him. We had that conversation in week 18. And I said the same thing that I'm saying right now. So it's been a month of saying this, and it did happen. So, but the punt, you have to down that. If no one would have touched that, it sits at probably the 2 or 3 yard line. And you put the 49ers right there in a 24-24 game, and your pass rush gets to Purdy. Maybe you get a safety if you force a 3 and out. So it's just little things like that. They just all added up. It was painful to watch. I can't even imagine watching this game with a Lions fan.
Anything,
Brinson's crying. Oh, he's on mute.
Oh,
I thought he was crying.
I thought he lost his voice.
Oh, tears coming out.
Sorry. Did you even hear me yell, Wilson? You look the same in both of those.
I noticed that, but I didn't hear you.
We read your mouth.
I heard you giggle. Let me ask you this. Do you think that it's possible that the way we view, the things that happened in the second half for the Lions, the punt stuff, the Gibbs fumble, the Brandon Ayuk catch, to me, like momentum is a thing. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's crazy where it's like, oh, momentum's not. I mean, momentum has to be real. Like, I'm an NC State fan. I've seen it rip apart an entire stadium several hundred times in my life. But I don't think that those things happen to the Lions because Dan Campbell did or did not go for it on fourth down. Like, I don't think the mentality of the team changed. One of Prisco's arguments on our text thread was that you got this young team and suddenly they're questioning themselves. And I mean, like, this is a viable argument. Like, and we don't know. Like, do you guys think that at any point the decision-making by Dan Campbell caused the Detroit Lions to pucker up, lemon booty Breech, if you will, and make mistakes? Or do you think it was simply the 49ers weren't going to be held down that freaking long, not with that defense in the way, and frankly, the 49ers offensive game plan in the first half was just bad, and that Dan Campbell wanted to keep his foot on the gas, and they just suffered a series of what Lemony Schnickets would call a series of unfortunate events.
Breech, let me just say a couple things and then you can respond. Number one, I think that Brinson's magic beans that were shipped to Tomlin, he shipped it to Kyle Shanahan the last 2 weeks. Number one. And number two, you sort of touched on it with the Cowboys-Lions game and back in the regular season in terms of how Dan Campbell's going to approach things. And the only last thing I'll say is that we saw a bunch of quotes during the game from Lions players who said they would rather play for no one else than Dan Campbell, and he's gotten the most out of them. I can't imagine that any of those guys were worried about anything. They were probably just ready to go the next play. And a lot of times when you ask players, they would much rather be aggressive than be passive. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that for the most part, but not in the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship when you have a chance to tie the game. I think that if you tie the game, you're saying, all right, I have confidence in my defense to get our team the ball back so that we can win this game. And obviously you showed confidence in your offense by going for it, but they let you down. And I don't know, it's just interesting because look, I think that when you look at the 2021 or maybe 22 Chargers, when they had Brandon Staley and he was hyper aggressive all the time and it blew up in his face, especially in that Raiders game in week 18 with the winner going to the playoffs and they didn't make it. And all people wrote about at the end of that season was, man, Staley doesn't know what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. And then to Brinson's words, he puckered up after that. He was never the same coach because he always got in his own head. He didn't know what to do in key situations. He didn't know when it made sense to go for it on fourth down. It was a changed man out there. So we'll see. Be interesting to see what Dan Campbell looks like going forward. But
hey, let me ask you one more thing before we move on. Would you have kicked a field goal earlier on the last drive for the Lions? They ultimately scored a touchdown, but they had to use the timeout. They had to go for it on fourth down, and they had less than a minute left by the time they tried the onside kick.
I think the way to answer that for me is that not necessarily that you should have kicked earlier, but that, or maybe you should have kicked earlier. You needed to have the 3 timeouts. Even if you were going to try an onsides anyway, which I think is a pretty viable case to make, that they, regardless, they were going to kick an onside, try to stop them. You have to get the points. You have to be kicking off with 3 timeouts in your pocket. I think I would have preferred, Breech, and correct me if I'm wrong on the math here, after third down when you run the ball, which you shouldn't have done. You have to pass the ball on third down there. And I get, like, and again, a lot of this stuff is, if it works, that's great. And they did this before, I think late in the regular season when they ran on a third down or a fourth down. They did it with Craig Reynolds in there. Most people were thinking, oh, he's a pass down back, they're going to pass it here. They run it, draw up the middle, scores a touchdown. Well, David Montgomery was tackled short of the goal line. The clock is running. To me, run no huddle or sprint your kicking team out there and bang home a field goal, even if it's like a 15, 18-yard field goal, whatever it is. Get a field goal, run the offense out there and run no huddle, but run a play because you're going to get the play off with over 40 seconds left and have 3 timeouts remaining. Like, you have to have the 3 timeouts left, no matter what. To me, that was the biggest failure.
Yeah, that was totally shocking that they let that happen. I don't know if Campbell would have had to sign off on that play call in that situation because it's so crucial. If running the ball, you don't get the touchdown, the game's over. And it was. I mean, that's what happened. Onside kicks are almost impossible to recover now. Yep. And it is. I probably would have kicked the field goal a little bit earlier, maybe when, Dan Campbell clearly doesn't trust his kicker, he wants to get touchdowns all the time. He doesn't do field goals. But the more time you leave yourself on the clock, When I think they got down to, it looks like the 16-yard line with about 1:35 left. If you kick the field goal there,
you get a first down, you just kick the field goal, and you're down 7, and you kick off deep with 3 timeouts left. Like, that's not a crazy decision there.
Right. And then the flip side, now once he decided not to do that, and you get down to the 1-yard line and you keep burning time at that point, I do think you have to have the touchdown because you keep costing yourself more and more time. And if they would have gotten the touchdown there, they had 2nd down at the 1-yard line. They had 3rd down at the 1-yard line. If they score on either of those 2 plays and have all 3 timeouts, you could theoretically kick it deep, because if you onside kick it, you're probably not going to recover it, and you have to make a stop no matter what. You have to make them go 3 and out. And if you kick it deep, use all your 3 timeouts to go 3 and out, you need like 15 yards to get in field goal range, although we don't know what Michael Badgley's field goal range. So I felt like they botched the end of the game. This was just not.
They called the timeout with 1 minute remaining. I would much rather sprint the offense. And look, granted, if you call the timeout because you're like, we're completely flustered, we have to have a play call ready that will score the touchdown. But if you score that touchdown with 45 seconds left and have 3 timeouts, that's substantially better than 56 and 2 timeouts.
If you score with 30 seconds left and 3 timeouts, that's better than 2 timeouts with a minute left, because the 49ers can run 40 seconds off the clock thanks to that timeout not existing. So anything over 20 with 3 timeouts would be better than 1 minute left with 2 timeouts. And so it was just crazy that, that was just not. I thought Dan Campbell was a better in-game coach than Kyle Shanahan. This is stuff I would expect out of Kyle Shanahan, just based on their track record and what we've seen in the postseason before. But man, no, this was a clinic on what not to do in the final 2 minutes of a game.
And just real quickly, I think it's worth noting, like, Josh Reynolds had a good season, and he had a great game against the Rams early on, his old team, helping them win that playoff game. He had 75 yards in the first quarter, I think. He had 2 really bad drops in this game. The 4th down one is like a 7 out of 10 bad drop. The 3rd down one's a 10 out of 10 terrible drop. And I get maybe your confidence is shaking or whatever. You could also, Prisco lamented, just while we're on decision making real quickly, lamented the flea flicker and said that it was, quote, a drive killer. And he said it at the time before like the drive actually ended. I mean, I don't mind it. They've been gashing him with the run, but like, you call that play and you get Jameson Williams, like, with the ball coming down to his hands, he got hit from behind a little bit. I was fine with it. I think it's just a couple of those plays go the Lions' way, and they win this game. I don't know, not easily, but they win this game pretty handily.
Here's something that Brian McFadden said on the pregame HQ tonight when we were talking about the ending of the game we're going to talk about next, but also it applies to this Lions team. He said at his first Super Bowl 2005, which was Coach Cowher, incidentally was in Detroit. Coach Cowher that week, 2 weeks in preparation, told the coaches and the players, do not change anything that you've done to get to this point, because you start turtling up and then your butt cheeks get tight and things like that happen. And we just saw a tweet that Debo put on the screen from Campbell's press conference, and he says he understands the scrutiny that comes with the decisions he made. He stands by the 4th down decisions. He gets that's part of the gig. He doesn't regret coaching the way he did. And I think it's the way you got to think about it. And sometimes, another thing that Dick LeBeau used to say, sometimes the bear gets you, sometimes you get the bear. Today, the bear mauled them. Our buddy Ben Solak tweeted this out, which is also incredibly demoralizing. Expected points lost for Detroit, minus 5.5 points for the Gibbs fumble. Started the snowfall of terribleness. The IU doinker, minus 3 points. Reynolds' 4th down drop, minus 3 more points. The incomplete to St. Brown on 4th and 3, minus 2.5 points. So, I mean, they could have won by 3 scores, it feels like, but they did not. All right, so we will talk about the Lions and once we get to the offseason conversation, because they are now officially in the offseason. We'll talk about the 49ers later in the week because they are still playing and have to meet their AFC nemesis in the Super Bowl 58, Las Vegas, CBS, Paramount Plus. But in the meantime, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about that AFC championship game between the Chiefs and the Ravens right after this.
The biggest event in sports is coming to the entertainment capital of the world. CBS Sports HQ will have you covered every minute, getting you set with all the critical analysis you need. Ready, set, Vegas.
Man, it felt like the Ravens didn't take BMAC's advice, and they did the exact opposite of what got them there. Gus Edwards ran the ball 3 times. That doesn't make sense. And Breech, we talked last week, and You caught a little guff for saying that Lamar didn't play great in the first half of last week's game and then turned it on. He didn't play great in this game either. Not entirely his fault. But I think the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes has never played on the road in the playoffs. Turns out it doesn't matter. Brinson talked about this offense turning it on. Turns out they don't need anybody but Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce and a little bit of Rasheed Rice in there, and then you're good to go. Travis Kelce had his 8th catch midway through the second quarter, ended up with 11 catches on 11 targets, and pretty much took over that game, as did Patrick Mahomes. They ran the ball better than most teams have on the Ravens recently. I know over the last month of the season, the Ravens were given a bunch of yards, but I think there are explanations for that. All right, Brinson, how'd the Chiefs do it?
I saw this from Adam Chernoff, and I was looking to confirm it, but I mean, I think my eyeballs confirm the generality of it. The Ravens had 3 runs to running backs after the first quarter. They passed on every down. I think Todd Monken has been a revelation for the Baltimore Ravens and that offense, and Lamar Jackson. His coaching helped Lamar Jackson improve as a passer. And I think Lamar was always a good passer, but I think that it helped him flourish as a passer and shut the idiot haters up who said that Lamar wasn't good. Like, he's a running back, plays quarterback, all that crap. I don't think this is about Lamar in a playoff game. That's a narrative that gets bandied about way too much. But, man, the game plan for the Ravens against this Chiefs defense was just not very good. And it was asking Lamar to sit in the pocket and throw way, way too much. He had 37 passing attempts for 272 yards, completed 20 of them. There were so many times it felt like if Lamar didn't try to get through his second, third, fourth read, whatever it was, and just took off, he would have tons of – it felt like he could have run for 250 yards today. And I'm not saying that should have been the game plan coming in, but the game plan should have been to pound the rock against Kansas City, to run the ball against them, and to force Mahomes into being one-dimensional. Mahomes, and look, there wasn't a touchdown scored after the 10-minute mark of the second quarter in this game. Both defense stepped up in a huge way. Mahomes, those first 2 touchdown drives, was magnificent. That was F you for making me a dog. I'll win on the road, Mahomes. He started 11 of 11. He was incredible. But then the Ravens defense adjusted. They completely shut down the Chiefs. And if you hold Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes to 17 points in the AFC Championship game, you need to win that game. And the Ravens should have scored more than 10. They had some bad luck too. The Zay Flowers stuff. We'll get to that in a minute. But I thought the game plan in general from Baltimore on offense was very poor, and it didn't adjust. They didn't adjust at all. It didn't change, and that was the difference for me in this game.
Yeah, I'll say if I could have a GOAT of the game, as in the person who I would blame it on, not
greatest of all time, yeah,
not greatest of all time. It's so confusing nowadays. It would be Todd Monken. I cannot believe that you have the number 1 rushing attack in the NFL. And if you watched any film from the Bills-Chiefs game last week, which I'm assuming he did, the Bills ran for like 180 yards. If there was one thing you can absolutely do on the Chiefs defense, it is run the ball. And to Brinson's point, the Gus Edwards, first carry of the game, goes for 15 yards. You would think, hey, 1 carry for 15 yards, that's pretty solid. Let's give him the ball. Let's feed him and see what happens. He got 2 more carries the rest of the game. That's it. They didn't even, and, if this game was 31-10 or something like that, where it necessitates you getting out of your game plan and throwing the ball, that's one thing. I would get that. But this is 17-10. It was a 1-score game for a good chunk of the 4
quarters. 6 running back carries.
I mean, and even when you're down 17-7, you're still in a spot where you stick to your game plan. You don't get crazy and throw the ball 37 times with Lamar Jackson. That's not how this offense is designed to run. It's not what Todd Monken did the whole year. So it was just mind-blowing that they called the offense like that. Now, to Lamar Jackson thing, you can definitely pin some of this blame on Lamar. Todd Monken is the number 1 guy on that offense I would blame.
Is it
But
Monken or Munkin?
We're going to get a recording and press it every time I. But look, Lamar had a horrible interception in the end zone. You can't take that away. There's the strip sack. So he had 2 key turnovers. And when you look at what Lamar Jackson has done, that's 3 of his 5 playoff games where he's had multiple turnovers. So I don't think it's unfair to say he struggles in the playoffs because this is a struggle. He's been in 4 playoff games where he scored 10 points, 3 points, 12 points, 17 points. I think this is the 3rd time where the Ravens' lowest scoring total of the season came in a playoff game. Why doesn't this offense work in the playoffs? Like, what's the explanation for that? Is it because the offensive coordinator decides to go rogue and, you know what, let's just try a completely new game plan that we don't even know if our offense can do. Let's just do it. And, you know, like the Lions, there were some drop passes here but it just, this offense wasn't going to work the way it was run today. I don't know what they were doing. It just didn't make any sense, Wilson.
So it is a perplexing development, no doubt about it. So as we go through their regular season, they had 11 wins against teams with 500 or better record. That's incredibly impressive. And they were just smashing teams. They beat Detroit 38-6. They beat Seattle 37-3. The Rams was a little closer, but they scored 37-31. Jacksonville 23-7. The 49ers and Miami in back-to-back weeks blow their doors out, 33 points and 56 points respectively. And then a 10-burger at home in their first AFC Championship game. They rolled out T. Sizzle. They rolled out Ray Lewis. Those guys, I would say they need them, but the defense actually played incredibly well in the second half. I think Mike McDonald, he's got an interview, I think, scheduled for tomorrow, reportedly. That was the best resume builder you could put out there, that second half performance against one of the most one of the best offenses, at least in the playoffs, because I've been crushing this offense in the regular season.
Mike McDonald and Ben Johnson are, it sucks because their team, you lose the championship game and you're probably losing like 2 of your most important coordinators.
Yeah, it happened to Debo's Eagles and they turned out fine. So I'm sure that these teams will be okay. Sorry about that.
I noticed somebody in the chat was lamenting the lack of credit we gave to the Chiefs defense. Chiefs defense was awesome. Chiefs defense played really well.
We just started the conversation. We'll get there.
I know. I was just putting it out there.
Yeah. No, I'll start here. Charles Omenihu went out, and to both your points, one of your best, well, your interior defensive lineman that certainly helps out. Chris Jones is your dude. Run the ball. Why aren't you running the ball? And by the way, when Isaiah Pacheco was running the ball 24 times, and he only got 2.8 yards per carry, but the point is that they didn't go away from the run. And when you're having a conversation, 2024 Andy Reid's certainly different, but where Andy Reid is more committed to the run than you are, you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror about what you're doing and why you're doing it, because it just doesn't add up. The other thing they didn't have Willie Gay. He was out. He was going to be the spy for Lamar Jackson, which again goes to the point, hey, let Lamar run a little more. It was Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal missed a sack early on, I believe. And he's certainly not the athlete that Willie Gay is. And L'Jarius Sneed balled out. Deion Bush had the interception on the triple team that Breech mentioned earlier. Trent McDuffie is one of the best young players in the NFL.
And Sneed forced the fumble in the end zone, right, with Zay Flowers?
You know,
after Zay Flowers got the penalty for taunting him on that.
After Lamar Jackson underthrew him for what could have been a touchdown.
Yeah. The only way that turnover would have been better if it had been Mecole Hardman who punched the ball out, but it was not. He fumbled last week.
A crazy turn of events.
No, Mecole fumbled last week at the Bills game.
And that was, the whole thing with the Zay Flowers taunting, it is what it is, because in the end, it didn't matter because they got back down to the 1 yard line. What mattered is that he fumbled the ball at the 1, and that's the thing that cost them, not the taunting. So,
and then Breech, he was so angry with himself.
It was his fault.
He was so angry with himself that he went to the sideline and tore his hand up banging the ground.
So the 5 is a 10-minute span for, and I appreciate the retweet, Breech. I noticed that. Breech bump. The 10-minute span for Zay Flowers, he catches this long pass, does like 7 crazy moves, and Zay Flowers is going to be awesome. He's a great player, incredible rookie season. The 2 teams who lost, by the way, in the championship games had a lot of rookie contributors, or at least on offense, and the Lions with Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs. But some rookie moments. He stands over L'Jarius Sneed, pushes L'Jarius Sneed to the ground, stands over him, throws the ball down. Of course they're going to call taunting there. And I agree, Breech. It didn't matter technically because immediately after he got a 14-yard completion that sort of wiped it out. But, would have been nice to have that for a touchdown. Then Rashad Bateman maybe had to catch it between there. and then he gets down to the one. But as he's diving in, Ladarius Sneed comes flying out of nowhere and hits the ball and knocks it out. And I'm not saying that Ladarius Sneed was more motivated to create a turnover because of the taunting, but this was a rookie mistake and a foolish move by Zay Flowers that sort of felt like it in a similar vein to Dan Campbell's 4th and 2 decision or 4th down decision making. It felt like because of when it happened and what happened afterwards, that it sort of spurred on the opponent, and or was just like, well, it was just that sort of pivotal moment that kind of felt like it changed things.
Yeah, and then because it's 17-7 at that point. If you score a touchdown there and it's 17-14, it's a completely different game. And again, I mean, even the very next possession was the Lamar interception in the end zone. And once again, you just can't do that. And the reason it's not, look, the throw was horrible. You can't throw into triple coverage. That's one thing, but there's no need to take that risk because a field goal cuts it to 1 score. You just have to get something. There was no reason to throw a ball with 3 guys over your receiver. That is what it comes down to, is that you cannot make a decision like that in the 4th quarter of a game that you are trailing by double digits when a field goal will cut it to 1 score. And that it was that kind of
on that play. I don't even think Nance and Romo talked about this, but they showed a replay that was from the end zone looking back towards the quarterback.
If Lamar would have put a little more mustard on it, it might have
a little more mustard, but likely also threw up his hand as soon as he got released. And you're like, when you see it from that angle, you're like, oh, he's in single coverage, running up the seam, and there's like 2 defenders converge there. Yeah, I agree with you. You have to get a field goal there. It changes the complete dynamics of the game.
What, Breech? Go ahead.
And real quick, because the drive before, so you had the interception, you had the fumble, those were both in the 4th quarter. The drive before that, they punted from Kansas City's territory, and that was one where they had the ball at the 40-yard line. So you're on the edge of Justin Tucker field goal range, and Lamar gets sacked for an 8-yard loss. And that's another one of those where you cannot take a sack in that situation because now you're from fringe field goal range to you have to punt. And again, a field goal would have been such a big thing to get in either of those instances. And obviously a touchdown would be huge in the Zay Flowers instance. So you gave away 3 points with the interception. Zay Flowers gave away 7 with the fumble. And then you possibly gave away 3 points with the sack on the punt. That's 13 points in a game where there were only 30 total points.
It's very Lions-esque if you do the negative math. By the way, in the interception, Lamar talked about it in the press conference. He was asked about it. And he said he saw Tampa 2, so 2 deep safeties and a middle linebacker running deep. And he basically said what you guys talked about. He tried to throw it and give likely a chance, but he didn't put enough mustard on it. And he said, you can't make the mistake. But he knew what he saw. He just didn't make the play happen.
And fun fact real quick. Chiefs were the first team since your Steelers in 2010, Ryan, to win an AFC championship without scoring a single point in the second half.
Let me ask you about this. I want to hear some of Brinson's game theory on this. So 2:34 to go. They just kicked the field goals. The Ravens did to make it 17-10. And there's a penalty that makes it 1st and 5 for the Chiefs. Baltimore had 12 men on the field. So I never heard of this game theory, but I think it makes sense, at least the way Romo was selling it to me. Roquan Smith absolutely destroys Trey Smith. All he had to do was touch him to get
this is really smart.
To get the offsides penalty to make it 1st and 10. But instead, he got called for a personal foul because he tried to put Trey Smith through the back of the bleachers. You okay with that?
I think they were trying to draw a encroachment penalty, like offsides penalty, whatever you want to call it. And the referees, in order to prevent them, in order to be like, oh, smart move, you should do this, called a personal foul penalty on it.
Well, he jacked him up. I think that's why he called it.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like he could have just run off sides though. But then, I think you can decline it. We've talked about this before, I think. At any rate, it was a really smart move because you have 1st and 5. If the Chiefs get a 1st down, the game's over. So what you want to do is force them to have a longer 1st down, no matter the cost. And so even if you're like, I'm going to get a personal foul penalty, it was still worth it. Because you want to try to force the Chiefs into a longer 1st down so they can't go 1st and 5 and then pick up the 1st down. It's over.
Breech, let me ask you this. Let's talk some more, have some more happy thoughts about the Chiefs. We talked about how the 49ers sort of got here, and it you feel good about it if you're a 49ers fan, but you don't feel great about the way the offense is playing. given the way they played in the regular season. How excited are you about the way this Chiefs offense is coming together? And is this sustainable with Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, and then MVS Rando catching into the game to seal it?
Yeah. Real quick, comparing this to the 49ers game where the 49ers very well could have lost their 2 playoff games. The Chiefs have been dominating. The Chiefs defense was awesome. The Chiefs offense somehow regular season does nothing the last few weeks, flips the switch, and now looks completely unstoppable. I mean, sure, they only scored 10 points, but when you get 2 touchdowns to start the game and you put the Ravens on their heels instantly, especially against what was supposed to be a historically great defense, and they are, and it's just Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. I mean, it was nuts out there that the ball is going to Travis Kelce. The Ravens know the ball is going to Travis Kelce. You guys know it's going to Travis Kelce. Taylor Swift knows the ball is going to Travis Kelce, and yet no one can do anything about it. 11 catches for 116 yards. The guy passed Jerry Rice for the most receptions in postseason history. That is just bonkers. And so I will say that, and we kind of said this last week, that Travis Kelce looked like a slow 34-year-old guy the last few weeks. It was like, oh my gosh, is this going to retire? But now it just looks like he was thinking, I just need to get to the playoffs. I don't have the stamina to go through a 18-game season. Let's just start the playoffs so I can beat everybody to a pulp. And that really feels like what's going on here. I mean, the Chiefs offense looked good for the first half, and it didn't matter in the second half because their defense was so good. And if you're a Chiefs fan, you were thrilled that your offense looked so good in the first half against a great defense, and you were thrilled that your defense looked so good against a great offense. So I would think if you're a Chiefs fan, you walk out of this game, walk out of this with a lot of confidence heading to the Super Bowl.
I think that the Chiefs, and we talked about this last week, Wilson was like, can the Chiefs just flip a switch and be good on offense? Now, they weren't good for the whole game, but clearly that gear is there for them to get to. We saw that in the first quarter against the Ravens. And I think when you go against the Niners defense with that secondary, you could definitely see a situation where it shows up as well. What this reminded me more than anything of, though, was the Patriots and how the Patriots would find a way to grind through the season. And most years they would have home field advantage, largely in part because they're in a terrible division. The Chiefs, the 3 seed, so that wasn't the case. They did have one home, obviously the home game against Miami, weird circumstances with the weather. But this is a Chiefs team that, just like the Patriots, has an incredible Hall of Fame coach with multiple Super Bowl titles, an incredible future Hall of Fame quarterback with multiple Super Bowl titles, multiple MVPs, multiple Super Bowl MVPs, and one really elite weapon, at least, right? Whether it was like Gronk or whether it was Welker, they just always, or Edelman even, who would just show up in the playoffs. It reminds me of that, except Mahomes maybe has a better ceiling than Tom Brady on any given game just because of his physical abilities. And I don't know, people are like, well, Kelce might be toast. The Chiefs offense is done. Andy Reid can retire. They could rip off 3 straight Super Bowls starting 2 weeks from now.
Hey, let me ask you this. This Chiefs team offensively isn't where it needs to be, and they did only score 17 points, but they had a really good first half. Is this the best Chiefs defense Patrick Mahomes has ever had the pleasure of enjoying?
Easily.
Yeah, I'd agree.
All right.
I would say that the first team that won the Super Bowl in 2019, the first team that won the Super Bowl in 2019, that the defense came together in the playoffs, like this offense is kind of coming together, and so maybe you can make that case. But yeah, I mean, Brett Veach and Andy Reid too, and this front office has done a tremendous job of finding ways to improve this defense. George Karlaftis in the first round. What round was L'Jarius Sneed? A few years
He's
ago.
a day 3 guy.
Day 3, exactly. Day 3 guy. I mean, they have really done. The whole argument was the Chiefs better get their Super Bowls now because Mahomes has got to get paid and Kelsey's old and Tyreek Hill's got to get paid. And they traded Tyreek Hill, and they've been to back-to-back Super Bowls without Tyreek Hill. And you have to give credit to the front office for finding a way for finding guys in the draft in early rounds and in later rounds who have made major impacts. And that has been one of the bigger differences.
And the one thing I'll say real quick to that is that a lot of our biggest questions in this past offseason back in August, we were asking, how are the Chiefs going to win a Super Bowl with this offense? And well, the question is because their defense is going to partly carry them there, which hasn't had to happen in the Mahomes era. That there has been, for the first time, Patrick Mahomes has had a margin of error where he could fail a little bit and maybe have an off game during the regular season or get shut out in the second half of the AFC title game, and you still win because your defense is so good. And that's a safety net that he's never known before. I'm sure he is loving it. So yeah, I think the fact that their defense is so much better, we all thought it was going to be good, but it is great. Second fewest points given up this year, second fewest yards. It is beating up teams. And so that's why you have to feel good about what they're doing.
What's the tougher loss, Breech? Before the game start, you go to these coaches, you go to John Harbaugh and Dan Campbell on Sunday morning, and you tell John Harbaugh, you're going to hold Patrick Mahomes to 17 points. Will you sign for that? He would sign for that. Or Dan Campbell, you're up 24-7 at half. Which one hurts more?
24-7.
Yeah.
You're going to blow a 17-point lead in 2 quarters. I have to think that hurts a little bit more.
At least it's like you're on the road, your defense isn't great, the Niners are incredible. But I probably agree with that. Wilson?
Oh, yeah. No, I would imagine it's a low point. Although, I mean, the Ravens' expectations, I don't know of anyone picking the Chiefs to win that game. I think
everyone picked the Ravens.
A lot of people had the Chiefs covering because we all thought it was going to be close. Like no one was down on Patrick Mahomes, but the efficiency with which that Ravens offense and defense had been operating, to Breech's point earlier about where the production go, it did not show up in the stadium. Breech, you missed an opportunity for a fun fact here that relates to Harrison Butker. Do you know it, or do you want me to give it to you?
Does it have to do with scoring points? Or he has 8 straight 50 yards? What did it tell me?
The 8 straight 50-yarders after converting that 52-yarder.
Is that a record?
It's a record for me. It's a Wilson record for Harrison Butker. All right. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll do a little sneak look ahead. Early Super Bowl 58 preview. 49ers, Chiefs. And we'll tell you what the line is right after this.
Well, you need your sports news anywhere?
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
I mean, this is Crazy Town, USA, but Brinson, you can tell us if this is normal. The line opened at 49ers minus 2.5. It's down to 1.5 already, 45 minutes after the final whistle of the late game there.
Crazy is I told Devo, just put it in Slack. I had just somehow hadn't looked because we started on the podcast right away after the games ended. And I definitely would have said that the Chiefs would be favored. Now, having said that, because I think I'll probably pick the Chiefs to win just because of how, I mean, it feels like 49ers are favored again. The Chiefs have somehow been able to play no one believes in us. Like since
we just said that no one picked them to beat the Ravens.
I know, but I mean, remember Travis Kelce called people jabronis, so no one believes in us, and it's like, all right, you've been to 6 straight AFC Championship games, but everyone believes in you and is scared of you. You've been to 4 out of the last 5 Super Bowls.
Who'd you pick to win the Ravens game?
Ravens.
That's what he read.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe so. But so I think I would have guessed that the Chiefs were favored. I'll tell you what, I think that the Lions in Las Vegas would have been insane from a fan standpoint and sort of a, like man on the street, like the stuff you're seeing out and about in Las Vegas situation. And these two teams have been to Super Bowls in recent years. Obviously, we saw them in Miami right before the pandemic with the Hornet Sting play or whatever it was, Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs beat Jimmy G. But 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl since 94, I don't think. The Chiefs are trying to pile them up while Mahomes is there. And quite frankly, this should do monster numbers from a ratings perspective. And I would say, Wilson, that it reminds me a little of Seattle Patriots Super Bowl 49, where the line was 1 or 1.5. I could see this be Chiefs being favored for a little bit, then coming back, ending as a pick. And you have this, Seahawks team that's sort of a budding NFC West dynasty type of, great defense, young quarterback. We're not surprised that they're back there. Everyone thought they were prohibitive favorites to make it out of the NFC against the team from the AFC that's just been there every year for the last few years. And it's like the 49ers are probably the better team, but the Chiefs have Mahomes, just like Seahawks are probably the better team, but the Patriots had Brady. And so I think that's kind of an interesting aspect to it. Although it does ruin I think Chiefs Lions would have been the number one option.
Rick Sherman would have liked that, no doubt about it. Hey,
I'm just thinking from a CBS broadcast perspective.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's a great story. I think a lot of people I was pulling for the Lions because it's a fun story. Hey, let me ask you this, Breech, because this feels like a reversal of what we just saw, but the teams probably played a little differently. The last time these teams met in Super Bowl 54, San Francisco led 21-10 entering the fourth quarter. Then Kansas City pulled a 49ers 21-0 in the fourth quarter, and it was Kansas City's first win since '69, and they've gone on to go to Super Bowls since then. But what are the big storylines for you coming into this game? Because I don't think that last game is going to have any bearing. A lot of the faces have changed on the San Francisco side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's going to be a big part is Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes. You have the quarterbacks. You have Brock Purdy, who I feel like the first half of this game, it was like, what is this guy doing? He's just going to choke in every playoff. And then second half, the offense is clicking. They look good. And a big part of it is because he's running, he's throwing it. He looks accurate, made some great throws. And it was the same thing in the Packers game where it was like, how this guy is being totally outplayed by Jordan Love for 3 quarters. And then turns on the fourth quarter and has a game-winning drive. So you have the last pick in the draft against Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't seem fair, but the 49ers are favored because their roster is stacked. And if you would have asked me week 15 and just give me a list of Super Bowl matchups and Chiefs 49ers was on it, I would have picked the 49ers without blinking in week 15. But ever since Christmas night against the Ravens, and then you just look at the Packers game, the Lions game, and it is just, they don't look so invincible anymore. And I feel like the Chiefs can have success defensively and offensively. So I think this is going to be an interesting battle.
You know,
and like Brinson, I'm surprised that the 49ers were favored.
Let me just say this quickly. And I will be picking the Chiefs almost certainly, unless an asteroid gets
probably,
a part of the state and Patrick Mahomes gets shot into the moon or something. But I just briefly will mention the Super Bowl draft update, in which we all drafted 4.
Oh, God. Do we have to?
And Prisco was the 4th member of it. And I'd forgotten. I actually lost the list. Breech sent it to me the other day.
You went Niners first. I went Ravens second. So Pete went.
I had 49ers. So I'm in. Going into today, Brinson was the only person with 2 teams, Breech. He had the Ravens and the Lions.
Unbelievable.
Took the double L. Prisco has the Chiefs, and Breech has been out for 2 weeks. So it's me versus Pete. Old man versus older man for all the marbles. So
I also had a bet I made a few weeks ago that stinks now because it may have been cleared out. No, it's still there. Lions defeat Chiefs.
Oh, Brinson, that hurts. And one thing I will say about this game though is that I won't be surprised if it's a huge home field advantage for the 49ers, because you are talking about a short flight. I'm looking right now. You could fly from San Francisco to Vegas the Wednesday before the Super Bowl for $35.
What?
49ers fans can just pile into Vegas. It's so geographically close. It's the Bay Area. You have the tech money. Those people, you can afford Super Bowl tickets. And
you're not taking a $25 flight if you have tech money, Breech.
Well, that's true. Well, I mean, unless all the flights
also Breech, let's not forget that we've seen this because we've covered a bunch of these Patriots Super Bowls.
Yeah.
But you have, not that you get fatigue, but at a certain point,
it costs a lot to go to the Super Bowl every year.
You're like, I'm not spending $6,000 a year to go to the Super Bowl. It's really expensive. And the Niners were there 4 years ago, but the Niners don't have a win in 30 years.
Right.
So like being there for the 49ers to win, like Katie Mox and I were talking about this She's like, if the Niners get in, I'm, because like, look, some of us are flying out early before the game, and I think she was in that group. She's like, I'm going to find a way to go to this game.
What Tebow did last year.
Yeah, right. Tebow got to sit there and watch the Eagles lose the Super Bowl to the Chiefs.
Well, and to be clear, because
Breech did that too with the Rams and the Bengals.
Yeah, so let's go in reverse chronological order, or just chronological order. Debo, was it worth it in retrospect?
No.
Breech, was it worth it?
Yes, 100%, 1,000%.
At least Debo doesn't do it.
Debo had a Super Bowl from 4 years prior, though.
That's true. That's very true. By the way, Patrick Mahomes won't say this out loud, but Kansas City Chiefs fans, if you want to stay home and watch the game from the comfort of your own home, you don't like the hedonistic nature that Las Vegas might provide, just know this. Patrick Mahomes at Allegiant Stadium, he is 4-0, 313 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception.
Good.
Bring
That's
it on,
a
boys.
really good point. I hadn't thought about that, Wilson. And I mean, I think that does matter. Like, there's a lot of familiarity with playing in that stadium and sort of the nuances that go with it. That's a big deal, I think.
There you go.
Maybe for next Monday's podcast, when we rank the top 58 storylines of Super Bowl 58, we can discuss that.
When Brent and I do that individually, you do 56 of them, I do 2 of them. But this is Brenton mentioned the Patriots. You mentioned the Patriots. Chiefs are going to their 4th Super Bowl in 5 years, just the 3rd team in NFL history to pull that off. Patriots, as Brenton mentioned, did that. And so did the Buffalo Bills, but they lost them all, unlike the Patriots and Chiefs. So that's it. It's a really short list of teams that go to the Super Bowl this often. And maybe that's why. I do think Chiefs fans are crazy. Chiefs fans are great. They will show up. I'm just saying that Vegas is a lot closer to San Francisco, and it's a lot more manageable trip when you're coming from the Bay Area.
All right, little trivia here. If you've cheated, then we'll move on. But Patrick Mahomes can become the 5th quarterback to win 3 Super Bowls. Who are the other 4?
To win exactly 3 or at least 3?
At least 3.
Tom Brady.
Joe Montana. How many?
There are 2 more. And
Terry
Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw. There's 1 more.
Troy
Aikman. You guys are good at this. There you go. Andy Reid.
We were texting about it.
Andy Reid, 5th Super Bowl appearance, ties Tom Landry for 3rd most by a head coach. And he can become the 5th head coach to win 3, along with Bill Belichick, Chuck Noll, Joe Gibbs, and Bill Walsh. Man.
I will say, too, that, and I mean, I'm not like, I don't really feel like there's tooting my own horn or anything.
That's not like you. Go ahead.
Right, exactly. Because also it's like, guy is Patrick Mahomes, whatever. But it does feel like, so I said this after the first Chiefs Super Bowl. It just reminded me of Phil Mickelson winning his first major, and how, like Andy Reid won the first one. There's no longer the pressure of being the guy who didn't have, like, the greatest coach who didn't have a Super Bowl, and like, would he retire without a Super Bowl? And now he's got another 10 years of Patrick Mahomes. I don't think it's crazy at all if Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes retire, and they have put both Bill Belichick and Tom Brady into second place firmly into second place, the same way that Brady and Belichick did it to Bill Walsh. Maybe Bill Walsh, but it did it to Joe Montana for sure, in terms of like saying these guys are the greatest of all time. And you go and win this one, what would that be? 3 and 5 years? It'd be a very similar start to the Patriots.
Yep.
Hey, let me ask you this, Breech. And this is something that our buddy Joe Musso brought up when he was on HQ earlier. If they win this one, any pushback from dynasty conversations for the Chiefs?
No, I mean, they are, even if they didn't make it, you make it to 6 straight AFC title games, you're in the dynasty conversation. Okay. And when you win those and you're getting to the Super Bowls also, then yes, you are dynasty. And I feel like for NFL fans, it's got to be so weird because it's so hard to continuously win in this league, especially in the salary cap era, and to go straight from the Patriots dynasty to this Chiefs dynasty is shocking. It's really crazy to have this happen. Mm-hmm. And shout out real quick to Jared Dubin, who we do our preseason Super Bowl picks. We turn them in August.
What'd he say?
You talked about the draft that we do. So the Super Bowl draft, and me and Brinson are out. So just to rub all our noses in this, Brinson, your Super Bowl pick, you know what it was. You got half of it right. You got Bills 49ers. Wilson's was Chargers.
Hold on. I think one of the teams had a losing record and fired their coach midway through the season. Is that correct?
Yes.
The Chargers and who else?
Chargers, Eagles.
Oh God, even worse. They
Mine
fired
was
both their coordinators. Okay, go ahead.
Mine was Bengals, Cowboys.
Better.
And Dubin's was Chiefs 49ers. So he nailed it.
Very nice.
Wow.
By the way, Peter Schrager of Good Morning Football, I think friend of the pod, has predicted the Super Bowl winner correctly for 5 straight years, and he had, I think, Chiefs over 49ers.
When did he make the prediction before the season?
Yeah,
That is nuts.
he had the Rams winning it. He had the Chiefs winning it last year, and like there's if he gets this one, maybe it's either 4 and he's going on 5, or I can't remember what it is. But I mean, look. Here's the thing.
Brinson, it's called He's Smart. You and I try to talk ourselves into the Lions or some team coming out of nowhere.
He's also picked the Chiefs a bunch. It's just
right. That's what I'm saying. That's what a smart person would do.
Yeah.
That's the Sean Wagner McGuff.
Yeah, it really is. Shout out Sean.
Right, Prisco would always be like, it's the Patriots over the Packers. It's like you pick that every year, you clown.
Well, you get it right. All right, listen, before we get out of here, Brinson mentioned the line's 1.5, over under 47.5. What is your lean as they're called sharps breach? What is when the sharps say that? What's your lean?
Well, I would say that 47.5 number is really high for a Super Bowl. Even with these two offenses, I think these two defenses are good enough that you will see that number tick down a little bit. I'll say 46 is what it closes out. So I would lean towards the under. And I also think, again, that reminds me of Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl 49 out in the desert. I think we see this close a pick 'em. There is no way in hell you will see this line get. I don't think you'll see it get to 2, barring like major injuries. You will never see it get to 3 either way. I think it closes a pick 'em. I think it ends up drifting back towards the Chiefs. So if I were right now, I would lean towards Chiefs in the under anyway. And I think that's where the line moves.
The one thing about the under real quick is that the 3 Super Bowls the Chiefs have played with Patrick Mahomes, the winning team every time has scored at least 31 points.
Wowzers. That's a lot of points. Good little nugget there, Breach. Do you have an early lean, Breach, or do you want to do a kicking prop?
Nah, I'm leaning with Brinson here, except I would go over, but I think I would lean Chiefs right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a recurring theme.
Oh, look at
Jeez.
Who are those guys?
that.
So if you're listening to the audio version, Debo just flashed a graphic that will certainly keep you up at night. Pick 6 Live from Vegas, CBS Sports HQ. We'll be doing shows every single night, starting with Monday at the little, what's that called, the get-together with the teams?
Powwow?
No,
Media night.
Media night.
By the way, we're just real.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. We're going to be there media night. We'll be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Brinson will be doing some podcasts with Katie Mox, doing some gambling stuff as well. Be sure to check that out. Go ahead, Brinson.
I see a 48 out there, so maybe tick up a little bit in terms of the odds. But Chiefs already catching minus 115 on the juice at plus 1.5. So would feel like maybe that move feels good. Maybe we see the over tick up a little bit. So there you go.
All right,
and I bought a fancy new sports coat. I can't wait to show it off.
I can't wait to see it.
It's so much fun.
And by the way,
full
early Super Bowl odds show is going to be tomorrow, Monday at 2 p.m. And by the way, if you don't have a dog in this fight, and by that I mean all your favorite team is out, they're officially in the off-season breach. I'll be at the Senior Bowl this week. So if you want to check out the old With the First Pick podcast, me and Rick Spielman will be doing some shows from there. And then the following week, we'll all 3 be together in Las Vegas. What's the over-under on how many of us get arrested?
1.5.
1.5 is
100%. I think I would put it at a half.
Well, no, if it's a half, everyone's slamming the under. I mean the over.
I was gonna say if you're slamming the under, you're whatever what's the opposite of
well,
sharp?
I think that it's not so much over under on arrested, but maybe over under on how many of us have shenanigans related stories that come out of the Super Bowl. Because I think 1 is a pretty safe bet. I'm not sure who that would be.
We'll have to set aside a day after the Super Bowl. I got a week
good-
after where we share all our stories from Vegas.
I got a good little Super Bowl shenanigan streak going, so I would say the over/under.
Start one or end one?
What's that?
You trying to end a streak or start a streak?
The streak's rolling, man. I mean,
Okay, yeah, I agree with that part. yeah.
I think the last 3 years I got shenanigans.
All right, that's it for the old conference championship recap. For Willie Bear, for Johnny Boo, for producer Debo, I'm Ryan Wilson. We'll see you guys this week. Go 49ers.